Kako imamo većinu naših panelista iz drugog govornog područja, ovaj panel ćemo zapravo odraditi na engleskom. So, let me just thank you once again to all panelists for their time and effort to come here. We are moving from agribusiness a little bit up now, further into the value chain, and the topic is trends in branded food. As you know, success of consumer goods and fast-moving consumer goods companies is definitely strongly influenced by their ability to manage their brands. It is interesting to find out that, probably some of you know that for example, Nestle has 28 billionaire brands called. So 28 brands that generate 1 billion of Swiss francs turnover. Now it's even more important with the current development with the Swiss franc. But similarly, AB InBev has 13 billion US dollar brands. You remember certainly Budweiser, Stella Artois, Beck's, and so on. So these are facts that are well known, and the question is what is actually happening now or what is expected in the future. Data monitor research gives us some clues. For example, that in the 20 most important biggest countries, we have about 18% of, on average, of a private label market share. More importantly, there is expected growth in private labels. 45% of consumers indicate that they are purchasing more private labels than a year before. And finally, 88% of consumers indicates that they will continue to buy private labels even when economy improves. So this is one of indicators that it may not be just a temporary effect of economic crisis, it is something to stay longer. However, since obviously I'm not in the industry, I went to see and done some research, and one of the systematization of trends that I like the most is from American futurist Jim Carroll. He indicates 4 or 5 most important trends. First, we are talking about changing relationship with the food. That means food is not for consumers something that it was in the past. This is when we consume the food, this is also when we purchase the food. We are all aware and see that information available to consumer is growing rapidly. We are all aware of smartphones and applications that can instantly bring you a wealth of information for a particular product. Information like calories count, nutrition facts, so something that is, let's say, factual, but also soft things like other consumers' comments, evaluations, and similar. This is also influenced by the new influencers in the purchasing decision, in the in-store decision making for a consumer. So different associations are influencing what the consumer wants to buy. We are talking here about things like ethical food decisions, and we had a lot of discussion about GMO in the morning. So this is something also evident, and consumer has information and certain attitudes towards toward this aspect. This is for the in-store decision-making when buying the food, but also when the consumer is consuming food, we are also influenced by technology, by trends, where now we use different applications, again maybe on smartphones, where we track our calories consumed, where we track nutrition elements consumed during the day or week, and so on. Further, technology is helping us for a further advancement in traceability of the food. Today, it is possible to buy brands in some markets that prove their traceability of meat through DNA certificates and analysis. Is this something to stay, or it's fashion in this moment? So this all comes under the umbrella of changing of the relationship with the food the consumer has today. Second, for the companies, it is important. The companies need to respond faster to consumer preferences and changes in taste and purchasing habits. Some of you are probably familiar with the fact that, for example, fresh cut snacks grew from 6.8 to 10.5 billion in just 1 year in the States. So food is sometimes becoming as a fashion. It is very fashionable, modern to consume and buy fresh cut snacks. Snacks, sorry, not snakes. Also, there is a hopefully healthy change that we are more often with the food than it was in the past, so that the food is consumed more often than just breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Unfortunately, personally, I'm not yet there, but I'll certainly try to do that. And also, we see that some categories of food, in addition to the fresh cut snacks already mentioned, that they can explode in a very short period of time. For example, US Greek yogurt that grew 25 times in five years. That's about, now is sale of US Greek yogurt about 1.5 billion US dollars. Similarly, we have seen something here locally with Radler beer also having significant impact and trend in a fast growing niche. Then the third trend is impact of business model change and the social networks on food and taste trends. For example, today, with the help of social networks, it is easy or easier to promote specific new restaurants, restaurants that, because of social networks, can have a smaller startup cost quickly and easier to market them and to get to their targeted consumers. It is all about coming in time to the market, and these changes are now fastening and becoming very quick. And the fourth trend that Jim Carroll is indicating is consumer volatility, meaning yes, we have ups, but we can suddenly have downs. Some trends does not appear to be as significant as initially seen, like desire to move to healthy meals may not necessarily be in reality the same as is promoted by the people, and also let's say commented by consumers. Sometimes they tend to tell, oh yeah, sure, I'm changing my habits and I am eating more healthy than in the past, but in the fact we still prefer to have a good old steaks. And as a result of all these events, it is more difficult to predict consumer behavior than it was maybe in the past. So these are one illustration of the trends. In order for me to speak about this, I will introduce my panelists today. So from right to the further right, Frederico Caruncho, investor and CEO of Doruk Group. Doruk Group from company making about $700 million US turnover with effectively 3 business units: bakery, product line, ingredients, and agriculture. Then Mr. Tamas Eder, Public Affairs Director, Bonafarm Group, Hungary. Company that is primarily in agriculture and food processing, meat, around 550 million euros turnover. Some of the very famous brands are also known to Croatian, like Pik, Mizo, Ringa, Delhus, and so on. Mr. Greebe from Bunge, Food Director Danube region. Bunge is the world's biggest oilseed processing company in the region in Hungary. The most famous marks are Florio and Venus. Mr. Anton Gubkin from Hlebprom, Russia, CEO of Hlebprom, the company that is in confectionery business, primarily producing and selling frozen cakes in about 20,000 point of sales, with very strong brands on the Russian market. Mr. Tomislav Ljutić from Kraša, board member for marketing and sales. Kraša is well known to Croatian guests and I guess also to the guests from the neighboring countries, with confectionery products, cocoa products, biscuits, wafers, and candies, among other things, with a very strong brand. Some of them you can see right behind Mr. Ljutić. And Mr. Marco Travaglia from Nestle Adriatic, president of the board of Nestle Adriatic, the company that represents Nestle in this part of the world, in Adriatic region, has sales about 120 million euros in this part of the world, and achieving double-digit growth the last years with the well-known brands that we are all familiar with. This is my very brief introduction. I would actually suggest for each of them to introduce maybe their company with a little bit more on the key aspects of their business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm a partner in Doruk Group. Doruk Group is a Turkish originated company. Basically, as Slovan said, we have 3 lines of business. We try to integrate a branded bakery and branded fast-moving consuming goods totally to agriculture. So basically, we are in grain trade. In Turkey, we are in processing wheat flour and processing yeast. And then basically in fast-moving consuming goods, we are We have Uno, that is the leading brand in bakery products in Turkey, with 70% of the market according to Nielsen, and also we are developing our own a chain of retail stores.
So I'm representing the Bonafarm Group, which is the biggest Hungarian vertically integrated agri-food group. For you, for the easier understanding, we are the agro-core of Hungary, but we are a little bit smaller than agro-core, and we are missing the retail part, which is a huge disadvantage, I can tell you. We have 3 farms. We are cultivating more than 30,000 hectares. We are producing our feed. We have feed processor. We are producing pig milk and some poultry too. And we have 3 processing facilities. We have a winery which produces over 2 million bottles of wine, very close to the border in the Vinland region. And we have the biggest Hungarian dairy with some well-known brand, at least in Hungary and maybe even in Romania and some neighboring countries. It's Solen Miso brand. And last but not least, the pig with CK, not with PIK, like your one. The biggest Hungarian meat processor with 2 really well-known brands in the region, Pig and Herz, the traditional salamis, which basically are flagship products. We are selling them to more than 40 countries in the world, mainly in Europe, but now we are more and more successful in Far East. Thanks.
Thank you. Buff Greebe. I'm Dutch, but I'm based in Hungary, working for Bunge. Bunge is one of the leading agricultural companies globally. We're listed in the US stock exchange, roughly $50 billion turnover. And it's mainly active in the agribusiness around the world, trading, but also in food and ingredients, especially in Europe. That's our main business. But we're also very active in sugar, bioenergy, in all parts of the world, Latin America, and fertilizers. Here in Europe, Bunge actually did an acquisition of Cereal, which was a French company, in 2001, and with that we got a very big presence in edible oil across Europe, across Central Europe. We are now the leader in edible oil in Europe, and we are also in the meantime the number 2 in margarine. So we have big margarine businesses in Poland, in Germany, but also recently we did an acquisition in Hungary. So in Hungary we're also very active in margarine. In the Danube region, which I'm responsible for the food business, we have our main production in Hungary, where we do about 300,000 tons of oil, and we export from there to the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, and then all the Adriatic countries, and also Albania.
Thank you. My name is Anton Gubkin. I represent Hlebprom company, the leader of cakes production in Russia. To be the leader, Russia is big. We needed to approach as many points of sale as possible, and Slaven was quite correct. This year we reached about 25,000 points of sales across Russia. That gives us intimacy with our customers, and that's the key to our success.
Tomislav Ljutić from Kraš. You all know here Kraš. Kraš is one of the diamonds of this region. Like Mr. Travaglia yesterday said to us, he said, okay, Nestle is diamond of the world. Frank and Kraš, he mentioned, are the diamonds of this region. Kraš, in our portfolio, we have a few really iconic brands for this region, like Bajdera, like Domaćica, like Animal Kingdom, or Životinjsko carstvo on Croatian, like Kiki, Bronhi. From category view, we have a presence in sugar confectionery and chocolate confectionery business. In sugar confectionery, we cover mainly candy business, with brands Kiki, Bronchi, Peppermint, and some other products. In chocolate confectionery, we cover chocolate tablets, pralines, chocolate bars with the brands in chocolate pralines like Baidera, like Griotte, like Fontana. In chocolate tablets, we are market leaders with brands Dorina and Animal Kingdom. And in chocolate bars, we are also market leaders with brands like Bananco, now in recent times with Dorina, Choxa, and also with Tortica. On a yearly basis, we produce and sell more than 35,000 tons per year. Our estimation for this year is annual turnover of 170 million euro. This year we also made one acquisition. The colleague from Ernst&Young didn't mention that on the slide. We bought Croatian producer of wafer and biscuits called Carolina. So we got two really strong brands now in our portfolio, Jadro and Moto, that put us in a really good position in a region, especially in Bosnia, where that brands are market leaders in the category they have presence. Kraš also is a very socially responsible company, and we also employ 2,700 employees. We have a production site in 2 countries and on 3 locations. Our production sites in Croatia are in Zagreb and in Osijek, and also we have a production site in Bosnia, in Prijedor, where we mainly produce our B brands and some small quantity of private labels for retailers that we cooperate with. Thank you.
Poštovani dame i gospodo, dobar dan svima. Hvala Inforena na pozivu na konferenciju. Just 2 words. Marco Travaglia, CEO of Nestle Adriatica in the region. The region for us is former Yugoslavia. I think you said already what we do. I think we have quite well-known brands like Nescafe and Maggi products. We are present in culinary, in confectionery, in ice cream also here in the region. I think the most important aspect is that we employ about 450 people here in the region, and that's really very, very high-level quality people that I'm really happy to work with. And we are also in the process of finalizing acquisition, as you pointed out on your shot, Leon in Serbia, in Central Proizvod, culinary important business in Serbia, which will give us a stronger manufacturing base also in the region. We already have a manufacturing base in Serbia in ice cream. We look forward to expand that one also with this acquisition, because for us this region is a developing part of the world for Nestle and very important. Thank you.
Mr. Travaglia, maybe we can start with you and your views on recent trends on...
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Now, I'd just like maybe, you highlighted 4 important trends. Maybe I'd just like to give you my perspective on a different angle from a Nestle standpoint on the trends that we see. Let's say I'll tackle one more on the social aspect and one more on the pure, let's say, consumer and marketing aspect. Just a couple of facts on nutrition and health, which for us it's at the basis of the root of our company. And it's one of the most important things to reflect upon, I think, in terms of trends. And when you think about a couple of facts like obesity in the world, you have about 1.4 billion people that are considered to be overweight in the world, of which 500 million obese. When you talk about child obesity in the world, you talk about 45 million child being the overweight or obese. When we talk specifically of Croatia, it's about 8 to 9% of the population in the overweight or obese area. So one element to take into consideration. Other elements are, for instance, cardiovascular diseases. Cardiovascular diseases are responsible for 29% of the death causes in the world. And another element is micronutrients deficiencies. I mean, if you put the micronutrient deficiency in some of the parts of the world, and for instance, iron deficiency in Serbia is an extremely high level. I think it's the 3rd market in Europe in terms of iron deficiencies. you put all these elements together and you start to reflect upon really what is a key trend for us as Nestle in the world in the next 50 years, which would be the responsibility of providing food of the highest quality, but also tackle these issues. Because there is one simple thing, right? Cost of public health is extremely high. We are in difficult times in terms of recession, and so the pressure from both the governments, but from rightly the consumers on really solving this type of problems will come to manufacturer. And manufacturers like us have a very important responsibility in this area. So for us, nutrition, developing food which more and more are very good in terms of quality, very good in terms of what we call acceptance, but reducing progressively ingredients like salt, ingredients like trans fatty acids, those type of ingredients is of the utmost importance, because I think this is an extremely important aspect. Of course, you always have to balance, the nutrition and health aspect with the enjoyment. When we tasted in Italy, when I was managing director of the Italian food business, we tried, the optimal pizza without, no wrong ingredients and minimum level of salt, and it was like eating a piece of paper. So, you have to combine this level of enjoyment, because food at the end of the day is still about enjoyment. But this is a very important for me aspect that we need to take into consideration, because, society is changing, especially when you talk about child obesity. Children today are doing different things than what we were used to do. I mean, we were happy to go out in the streets and play with a ball. And today kids spend their time on Facebook and on video games, etc., etc. So the level of physical activity also of the kids is drastically going down, which is part of the reason why this is having an impact on the raising obesity. But this is why also for us it's very important that not only we produce products that are extremely adapted to this change in consumer behavior, and also that we advertise in an extremely responsible way when we talk about especially this sensitive target group. So that's, I think, one element for us in Nestle which is very important. The other elements maybe is, I would say, polarization of consumption. So we really find that there is a lot of compression in the middle, in the mainstream products today. And so you have a lot, or vast majority of consumers going towards the lower end, and in markets like ours, in the region where 30 to 40% of the disposable income goes to food purchasing, it's very important, and you can understand why in more difficult time maybe, you have a shift toward, lower price product, but at the same time, we're seeing the upper end growing. We have examples like, Nespresso, for instance, or Nescafé Dolce Gusto, where if you can really provide, a correct combination of good concept, good quality, good experience, etc., even if it is, premium product, you will have consumer going in that direction. So there are these two extremes a little bit, of polarization in consumption, which is, I think, another trend where Nestle is trying to cope with innovation, renovation, and other elements. So, among the other which I'm sure we will discuss, I think the two that we see is important for us in this moment are these two.
Sorry. Do you feel that in creation in the region, this element of package, particularly nutrition and the health element of branding strategy is accepted by the consumers in the similar proportions and similar way as in the Western world?
It's not yet, but it's increasing, and it will increase. It's not yet, for instance, in terms of micronutrients fortification. This is something that we see in all research that is vastly rejected in the time being. Because I think also here we have a very good tradition of natural food. I mean, this is fantastic country for we were discussing agriculture all morning, and it's a fascinating concept. I think here food is perceived to be by in itself natural, because we have a lot of consumption also of fresh food, fresh agricultural products. So the fortification with micronutrients is still viewed with suspicion from consumer, but I am totally positive that this will be a trend which will come in the future. So probably yes, we are still here a little bit behind in terms of the perception, because in the scale of priority still a little bit behind, and it's not felt as important yet. But with the growing concern about obesity, and I think the public by and large talking about it will come. So for me it's inevitable that we will go in that direction. Matter of time.
Mr. Greebe, what would be your view on the recent trends, talking from the Bunge perspective and edible oil and margarine?
Okay, thank you for the question. I assume that we will talk later a bit about the impact of the economic crisis. I'll leave that for the time being. But, you know, without repeating what has been said, let me pick a few trends that I think have not been mentioned yet, or not enough. One is the advent of retailer brands. A lot of people call it private label, and it used to be, private label is the low-end entry of the retailers in the market. Today, that situation is rapidly changing, and retailer brands is exactly what it says. It means they are truly developing into brands, and whether you like it or not, they will be around for a long time to come. And we as Bunge welcome it, because we have a branded operation. We also supply retailer brands across the region. And Nielsen recently did a very interesting study, and they said that there is a certain saturation point across categories, across countries, which says that retailer brands will achieve about 45% in the typical category, in the typical country. It also concluded that the #1 player, branded player, in a typical market can achieve 35%. But he will have 35% in a market with high retailer brands share, as well as in a market with low retailer brand share. Which basically says the retailers, they gain not at the expense of the market leader. If you're the market leader, you don't have to be worried. If you're #2, you can survive. If you're #3, 4, 5, 6, you're history. And it sounds very, you know, I say it in a maybe a challenging way, but that's really the future. So from a Bunge perspective, for us it's very clear. We want to be the #1 in brands, and we want to be the #1 in retailer brands. So that is one trend I would like to highlight. Another one maybe is a trend that I would like to see, which I don't see enough of. And that's a trend we see a lot in Western Europe. I've worked myself about 11 years in Asia, and there it's emerging very rapidly as well, and that is the trend of the supplier-retailer collaboration. The typical model is a fighting relationship. If I win, you lose. And I think as markets mature and become more professional, both suppliers and retailers come to the insight that by working together, you can actually both make a lot more money and can be a lot smarter. So understanding shoppers, why, you know, what's going on in their mind, how they make a shopping decision, which brands to buy, how much to buy, which store to shop in. If you understand that better, and with modern technology and information that is available to us, you can really analyze this. And by doing that, truly retailers and suppliers can find each other and build a more profitable category, which we all need in these times.
Moving to the impact of economic crisis, Mr. Eder, what's your view on the impact of economic crisis and how this is actually influencing the fight between branded and the private label?
Well, that's a good question. Well, private label is still quite new for the region, and when I say region, I'm talking about the Central East European region, so not just the region you are using in your discussion. So it's still new, and as it was mentioned earlier, when it jumped into the market, it was basically the lowest end of the quality scheme. And we even had a discussion, and we are still having a discussion, about whether the producer should be on the label of private label. Because several companies who are producing branded products, high quality, good quality products, don't want to see their name on some of those private label products because they are basically just cost-cutting products and so very low quality, and they don't want to be connected as brand producer companies to the products. But these times are just getting over. As you mentioned, more and more private label products are better, and because of the economical crisis, because of the problems, many consumer who earlier was traditional buyer of premium branded good quality product had to go down one shelf and buy a little bit cheaper private label products. So what we see now, it was mentioned also, the polarization of the market. So we are now having many and better private label products, which are basically still cheaper than the normal branded products. And we have opportunities to sell the premium, well-branded, good quality products, and the middle is just disappearing, it looks like. And if you look at the chain stores, the retail stores, you see that in the structure too. You are having more and more discounts. In Hungary, they are just every new discount store in every week. And they are basically selling private label products. They are targeting the value-oriented or money-oriented consumers. And you see the hypermarkets and the special stores which are not selling many private label, and they are still selling good brands at a higher cost, at a higher price. So this polarization is going on, and it looks like that sometimes at the end of the story we will have private label brands, and just as it was mentioned, we will have 2 or 3 brand producer in a country, and certainly we would like to be one of those, in Hungary at least.
And what are the key elements of strategy to maintain in the primary category for your company?
Well, first of all, you have to keep alive the brand in everybody's mind, so you have to use marketing and PR measures even in bad time. You have to spend money on that. Second, you have to look at those tendencies or trends which was mentioned, that people would like to eat healthier, people are a little bit more interested in the environment, so you have to prove that your brand is satisfying their need. You keep your animals in a circumstance what they would like to see. You know, a good friend of mine told me that the biggest problem for the animal husbandry sector or the meat processing sector was Walt Disney, who made the small, nice cartoon figures, very nice pets, which kids don't want to eat anymore. So you have to show the consumer that you handle the animals well. You have to show them that you go back to the traditional way of producing, for example, because they want to see less and less of those preservatives and added stuff and things like that. So you have to fight in a very wide range, but you are targeting the premium consumer who are more interested in the quality, and you have to demand, but you have to feel their demand.
Moving to the Russia, what's the, Mr. Gubkin, what is the situation in Russia, in your business? How do you see this fight? As I understood, your business is growing significantly, and do you feel the same problems with the polarization? How that affects cakes business?
Yes, definitely. Well, in our strategy, we need to follow our clients, which is retail sector. It's organized retail. They are investing significant funds into build out of more and more shops, and they kind of play a significant role in the leadership of the category. So if they want us to produce this kind of product, we have to follow. Because I have to say that the price issue is number one for the most of our consumers, and together with our clients we try to give the best possible product to our customers. Since we are a pan-Russian player, logistics is a significant cost for us. So this growth of private label, of our economy brands need to be balanced well with logistics and sales costs. And I have to say then there is actually little room for the marketing activities. The key issue is to maintain the right price for us. But since our clients are growing significantly, we have a significant demand in right priced food. So that's what we see now. We invest significantly into improvement of our production facilities. This is significant capital investment together with EBRD. We do much about this. So these are key issues for the Russian market. Significant growth balanced with optimum costs.
Thank you. It's good to hear that there are markets that do grow. As we know, there is the emerging markets are growing, but also I think that there is a bit of decoupling between China, India, Brazil, and maybe Russia on the other side, who is growing a little bit with a slower pace than the first three. But let's hear a little bit about Turkey and the situation in Turkey.
Thank you. Turkey is definitely it's a fast-growing market. I mean, it's a developing market with very, very different conditions to all the developing markets. Everything that is being said in this table is happening in Turkey as well, but it's happening at a different pace. Our brands are leaders in the market. We are seeing how private label is growing, and we are trying to adjust about what is going to happen. Should we be producing this private label in order to protect the market? Should we try to stop this private label? Is it possible? So basically the same questions are asked in very different markets. Even regarding private labels, I think private labels are in transformation. Brands are in transformation, so they are alive. The private labels, they are going to have different characteristics in the future. I mean, there is going to be private labels that they are going to be only based in price cutting, but there is going to be another private labels that they are going to give another attributes to the brand. So basically, branding in Turkey is like branding everywhere. I mean, brands are alive. They are born, they expand, they go to other markets, and in times like this, like in crisis time, well, they are also susceptible to die. So basically what we are trying to do, our point of view, is to try to be as close as possible and as truly as possible to the fundamentals of our brand. Are we close to the fundamentals of our brands, or we are not? And this is a time where basically brands are put to the test. How close you are to what you are saying. I mean, when I was listening to Marco, and it's really, really enlightening, how even in a crisis time, Nestle is trying to defend core issues that they are long-term plans. Definitely, in Turkey, I believe, like in every country, the important thing is to have a long-term plan for your brand, and sometimes it's very, very different from the tactic movements that you have to make, in the short period of time. But definitely, we are happy to be in Turkey. I mean, economy is growing, and I spent before Turkey 15 years of my life in China, where economy is moving very, very fast. And it's a very, very different scenario when you are growing. It's like surfing, no? If you are surfing and there is waves, it's completely different than where there is not waves. No?
Or you're under the wave.
Or you're under the wave, absolutely.
Mr. Ljutić, and what's the position of Kraš? Do you feel the same polarization here in Croatia? Do you feel attack from private labels?
And definitely the polarization is around us, and I think that, and quite sure that we were very successful in defending our market positions, since in the most our strategic categories we or even defend or even increase the market shares. So in these times definitely we needed to define like success. But I think that we were quite successful in a prediction what will happen, and we as a company were in some kind of really complex situation. And first we started with analyzing every product or every brand, and to see what are the real values, or what are there some competitive advantage in some brands, are they unique in some things. What is the real brand essence of every brand, and after analyzing that, after finding right answers on that questions, we first decided not to do any brands that we will not focus in the future, and after that brands that we will focus on, and that we will also mostly support with marketing investments, technical investments, and we also try to see how consumers will behave from these new trends that will occur in the market regarding these healthy movements, and also this new trend regarding price sensitiveness. And so we try to create new strategy for our brands, connecting all data points. So we broadened the borders of our brands. We go, for example, with some of our really strong brands in some new directions in healthy segment, and for some brands we make complete change. So we try to follow some psychological prices, because our region is really price sensitive, and prices usually are the first and the most important to consumers, and we create totally new products in some categories. So maybe to call it, we try to find in some categories blue ocean. We didn't want to follow all other players in a category and to play in this red ocean. We don't want to just to look at panel and to see, okay, there is a market, it's 5,000 or 10,000 tons, and we want to compete in that. We wanted to move the borders of that category and to offer something new to consumers in that category, and this year we were quite successful in that. And thanks to that, our turnover for this year will grow, our market shares will grow, and we defend our positions from private labels also. And in the end, who suffered the most were the B brands or C brands.
If I can make just one comment on this, because I think Federico pointed out a very critical element, which is, brands are alive. It's, the brand and manufacturer producers like us have a great responsibility of keeping this brand life alive. And today, I think it's, for marketeers especially, is the most difficult time probably in history, because traditionally, you go back 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you have the traditional funnel to loyalty. You get awareness, consideration, trial, purchase, and then loyalty. You throw a little bit of GRPs in television, end of the story. More or less you got your mix, the variation was. Today the world has completely changed, because the world around has changed in terms of behavior of the consumers. consumers are much more difficult to reach, especially if you are targeting some audiences. And so building your path to loyalty, so really understanding what drives loyalty to your brand is becoming extremely, extremely complex today. If you think about that, you think you govern what people think about the brand. With traditional media like television, you don't realize that your brand is being talked about and governed by 800 million people on Facebook or whatever, and you don't control that one. And we don't, honestly, you know. Our company went to visit Facebook 6 months ago. They all went to Silicon Valley to discover what this big new thing is, and they came back with deciding we better strike a strategic partnership with them, because I think we are a little bit, not understanding fully what's going on here. So I think for marketeers, it's a fascinating moment. It's an extremely complex moment. And when somebody was mentioning collaborative supply chain approach or collaborative approach, I think it's the combination of us as branded manufacturing good working very well with customers that have the base of understanding of the shopper, and us at the same time working extremely well with deepening the understanding of the consumers. Because to me, long term, if we don't invest as branded manufacturing in the understanding of the consumer, which is extremely different from 20 years ago, we ain't going to be able to develop products that are going to be meaningful for them anymore. And we ain't going to be able to engage our brands with them anymore. So it's a fascinating yet difficult times for marketeers, I think.
Mr. Eder, do you see the same power of social media applicable for the, let's say, the main meat business and maybe wine business as well?
Well, it's getting to be stronger and stronger. So we have noticed that too, and we are using this social media. We just finished a campaign because we put back a traditional brand to the market after we bought it. Hertz was not part of our company 2 years ago. It was another company. It went bankrupt, and we didn't let to buy somebody else because we were afraid of a competitor in the salami market with a traditional brand. So we bought it back, and we have to revitalize it. And we used the social media to do that. We used new type of marketing, guerrilla marketing tools and Facebook tools to show this brand to show it in another way as it was, because it was a great task for us, because Hertz and Peak are basically pretty much the same salamis, and we wanted to put this Hertz back to the market with the less cannibalization. So we targeted the young, healthcare or health-conscious, trendy consumers, and we targeted them through the social media, and it looks like it was successful. So yeah, you have to use those tools.
Talking about moving into the new markets, your company has plans to go further to the eastern markets, Far East, and how will that work in bakery business?
Well, I think like in bakery business, definitely when you are considering to move to new markets, you always need to consider how it's going to be the operation. In bakery is even harder because you produce like fresh product, you deliver it to the market, you take the return. So basically it's really hard in terms of operation. So for us, when we are thinking about expansion and when we are thinking about international expansion, we move from the traditional idea of going greenfield and trying to build from the very beginning, and we are thinking much more about partnership, acquisition. Actually, Particularly partnership, because I mean there is like, we give strong value to the local knowledge, to the local operation of the market. Without that, I guess in all business, but definitely in bakery business will be very, very, very difficult to introduce your product successfully to a market. In terms of which markets, I think markets, they are very, very different right now. Mature markets is very difficult for a company like us to enter. In a little bit more developing or mature markets like ourselves, where we have more experience, the brand, actually, I will say that operation is really, really challenging, but in terms of brand, we are a little bit more allowed than in other countries because people are still believing in things, and basically food is one of the first things that people can access to feel that they are changing their lives. So my experience with branded products in developing markets is that the consumer is a little bit more willing, to experiment, to try, and to get new things than even in the very traditional or mature markets.
So effectively, it is more likely to go through the acquisition route.
Yes, at this point, with these types of companies and how fast things are moving today, definitely through acquisition or partnership growth.
And how would you approach to the valuation of the brands in the company?
Very carefully, very carefully, for all what we are saying today. I think there is a tremendous power in local brand, and especially in items like we do, bread, bakery, that they are really close to our traditions, and in this part of the world as well. So basically for us, like that will be definitely a very important condition, to have like a strong, good local brand. But as I said before, brand is a part of it. The second part will be the operation. How is the excellence of the operation? And something that our approach will be also is, this is going to sound a little bit demagogic, but I think what is happening with brands is what is happening with the economy. In the early 2000s, I think the economy has changed a lot. People is trying to take shortcuts. To build a brand, to build a successful international expansion is something that is going to require time. If you want to do it in a short period of time, you cannot do it. So for us, it will be very important also to choose those companies or those partnerships that they are thinking in a similar way. I mean, that their business doesn't end when they sell the company to us, or they don't prepare the company just to sell it to us. I will take in consideration that. Okay.
Mr. Ljutić, your experience with the acquisition of Carolina and your approach to obviously to Jadro and Moto brand and their strength, and how is that assessed in the acquisition process?
We just finished with the integration process of Carolina, and we are really satisfied with the process, how it went. The reason for the acquisition was first to strengthen our position on Croatian market, also in Bosnia, where the other was #1 brands in wafer category, and also the other is the brand with highest brand awareness in the region. So it has a lot of potential to grow, especially on Serbian market, Macedonian market, Slovenia, Montenegro. And only a few months after we acquired the brand, we, on many markets, achieved really significant growth rates with Jadro, and we really believe in that brand and are quite confident that it could even double its sales in the coming years. Also with Moto there is a lot of potential, but first we need to make our homework, to prepare investments, to prepare completely new branding. So after we do that, we will start with market execution, and we think that in the region, in this specific sandwich biscuits, there is a lot of potential that we could achieve. Also, we're not limited just to Croatian market for acquisition. Also, we are looking for some other opportunities, mainly in this region. Mainly, we know where we belong, and we want to strengthen our position in this region. We don't want to buy the similar companies. We want to buy the companies that have presence in some confectionery categories that could strengthen our position in the region, because in all these three locations we have plenty of capacities. So we don't just want to double the capacities with the same capacities. And another challenge for us is also entrance into European Union, because for Kraša and many Croatian producers it will be a really big challenge, because our main markets are Bosnia, Serbia, and Macedonia, and we will be forced to pay custom duties on that markets. And honestly speaking, on European markets we don't have a lot of potentials, because our financial resources are limited and we cannot afford to make some mistake in trying to enter some markets, to pay millions of euros on some entrance fees, listing fees, try to make a brand and not to succeed. That's why we are mainly focused on this region, and we need to prepare ourselves on a proper way and try to defend our positions in the region. Mainly that was the reason why we acquired Jadro. That's why we are looking for some opportunities in Serbia or some other countries in the region.
Mr. Travaglia, you are just in the process of acquisition in Serbia. So what are the key opportunities and risks you see in that acquisition?
Yes, we are completing basically the process. We are at the closing stage of Central Proizvod. The brand was one of the main reasons we look at Central Proizvod, because it's a very well run company with a strong brand C, complementing our product portfolio in culinary. We are mostly a coffee company here, so this gave us the opportunity really to complement our product portfolio with a strong culinary base and with strong production in the region, which for us is very, very important, because Nestle is a multinational company, but we see ourselves really as a local company in each and every market we are. We are in 180 markets in the world. We have 450 factories around the world, and 250 of them are in rural areas. And so, getting back to the discussion we had today, for us being able to connect with the local community, with local sourcing of raw materials, with the development of the society by and large, where we are with our companies and with our production facilities, is extremely important. So the two main reasons for us was basically the branding, and we see that as an opportunity for expansion beyond Serbia maybe, and the possibility to have competitive manufacturing, but really to connect more strongly with the country here, with Serbia in these specific circumstances, because the acquisition is mostly a Serbian business. And risks, there are always risks when you do this type of acquisition. We all know about it, but I think what we have found is a very well-run company. So now the issue, and you just coming through it, is the integration. To buy probably is, I would say, the easiest part, but it's not as difficult as to integrate.
Mr. Greebe, talking about further acquisitions and attractiveness of this market, what the government would need to do, what were the key aspects of government policy to help business grow?
Yeah, that is a very interesting and appropriate question, I think. We see, especially in this time of economic crisis, everybody is struggling. But as managers, we are paid to manage through good times, bad times. That is nothing new. What we see, and I'm sure there's many in the audience who experience the same, is that as long as the playing field is fair and level, we can compete in any circumstance. What we, however, see, and I just talk in general terms because I don't know all the countries in detail, but we see a lot of corruption going on. We see that the governments are under pressure to reduce spending, to increase tax revenue. Consumers are struggling because the savings are gone, they have high mortgages in foreign currencies, the unemployment, all these things are happening, so they are squeezed. The retailers are being squeezed because the government is trying to get tax out of the retailers, they put pressure on the supply, so it's really a difficult position. And if you then see that some players in the market don't play by the same rule book, and they, for example, a lot of VAT cheating that is going on. You know, okay, you can win that game on a short term, you can have some extra volume, make some extra money, but long term it's terrible for any country in the region. Because what happens, the business becomes very unattractive for suppliers and retailers as well. And people will start thinking, you know, why am I in this country and why am I spending my money here, and maybe there's better opportunities elsewhere. And that will only make the economic crisis worse. So I think it's extremely important that retailers, suppliers and governments work together to make sure the playing field is even so that everybody can benefit. That's one thing. And the other one, I'll be brief, is, and I think that is particularly relevant for the former Yugoslavian countries, not all, but Croatia is one of them, that of course the local players are very often protected by import duties, which makes it for international players very difficult to compete. And again, that is a short-term, in my view, short-term benefit for the country. Of course, the local players can enjoy, they can have higher prices, make a bit more profit, but it doesn't make them lean and fit to compete in a real world. And as soon as the doors open and for example, Croatia enters the EU, there will, and we have talked about it this morning, there will be, it's a different game, you know, more competition. And it's better to get ready early and then be open for competition. So those two things, corruption and import duties.
Mr. Gubkin, maybe given that your company is, let's say, having problems in meeting the demand, are you considering acquisitions?
Well, we looked at all possible possibilities on the Russian market, and unfortunately most of our competitors are very local and with, I should say, primitive methods of productions. So we understood that it is better to invest into our own brands, into modernizing of our capacity, and no, I think we will continue with this course. That's the way forward.
Okay, I think we are a few minutes away from lunch, so at this moment I would ask audience for the questions. No questions? You can also ask questions in Croatian. We will switch to English, translate it quickly. Okay, there are no questions. I would suggest maybe a final point from each participant, starting from Mr. Travaglia.
Maybe just one last trend, we didn't talk about it. I think it's something to take into consideration is the element of sustainability. I mean, the sustainability, you know, it goes back to what we discussed this morning about the agriculture, but also company needs to really prove. You have some markets today, you will not going to stay on the shelf of Tesco in the UK if you don't, prove that you have a certain level of sustainability record. So I think this, might be premature in some other parts of the world, maybe in our region, but here, for instance, in our region, this biggest, I think, resource of all that we have is our natural resource, land and water. So for me, the sustainability factor here is going to be extremely important. Even just one fact in Nestle, despite we raised production 78% in the last 10 years, we reduced water consumption by 60%, or 38%, 50%. So that to me is one of the elements that I think all of the companies are thinking about and should think about, because also this one will become, I think, a critical trend in the next foreseeable future. And we owe it to the world we live in.
I just want to point out what we already said. Brands are alive, and they will be alive in the future. You just need to be careful toward your brands. You need to invest in them every day. You need to communicate with consumers every day. Know where you belong, where your brands are belonging, and definitely it will secure the future of the brands.
I would like to add another point. I think it was briefly touched in another panel, is a human factor, because brands are not alive without people behind them, and sometimes it's really a challenge for a company to find and to stimulate and motivate people who are behind the brands.
Maybe I would like to end on a positive note. We have discussed a lot of issues that we see happening in the region, but in the end, and we're all business people, I think it's very important also to realize that every crisis is an opportunity. And if you have the brand, if you're smart, if the right strategy and the right execution, even in a very tough market, you can win.
So I'm representing a company which owns two brands which are older than 100 years old. So we believe that brands are alive and will be alive in the future too. You have to keep them in good shape. And just let me give one more sentence about a little bit something else, because I think you here in Croatia, you have to strengthen your brands very soon, because I'm always shocked when I go into a Croatian store and look at the prices. And I'm sure that when you open the border to the European competitors, some of your brands will be surprised how tough competition, cheap and good quality competition will come in. So build your brands and strengthen them, because that will be a surprisingly tough competition. What will come 1.5 years from now or something like that. Thanks.
Yeah, it's definitely it's difficult to add anything after that. I mean, I will only say and recommend, like, keep world perspective. The world is changing very fast. The world is very open. You have to see what is going on, not only in the European community, but everywhere in the world. And, you know, in order to keep alive, all of us, brands, government people, we are going to need to lose provincial view, and we are going to need to get, you know, world view. I mean, this is what I would like.
Excellent. Thank you all. Thank you, panelists, for your effort to come to the conference, for your time. I would thank audience also for the attention. I see very attentive public.